1012, der Menschenrechte-Podcast des Fritz-Bauer-Forums.
Welcome to this episode of 1012, the human rights podcast of the Fritz-Bauer Forum, this time in English. Today I'm joined by John Austin, a US expert on democracy, regional transformation, social consequences of economic decline. He spent many years working in Michigan, one of the core states of the American Rust Belt, and he studied public administration at Harvard University. And I'm happy to talk to him. John Austin, very warm welcome.
Well, nice to join you today.
You have spent many years in Michigan. How would you describe the current state of American democracy as you not only know the world in Harvard, but in Michigan as well? Maybe a little bit different at the moment.
We never imagined in this country, just as I know our friends in Germany never imagined that this beacon of democracy, the United States, which has been such an inspiration for the world, but also something that many of us as Americans still believe strongly in. This is our unique role to play in the world, is to show the way how a diverse society can work and can make decisions together to govern themselves. We never imagined that it would be tested and at risk as much as we're seeing today. I'm still an optimist and think hopefully our democracy will hold and reject the kind of anti-democratic forces that have emerged with Trump and MAGA. But, it's very disturbing and scary. That said, I've written something, we brought this kind of on ourselves, meaning we did not attend to long gestating economic inequities, in particular between people and geographies, meaning in this region, this Midwest, the Rust Belt, as you put it, though actually today it's really two Midwest. There's much of the old manufacturing, heavy industry region that extends from Minnesota all the way to Pennsylvania and down to Missouri that, was the crucible of our great industries that powered America's economic might in the 20th century, just as the Ruhr and other parts of Germany powered Germany's industrial might after World War II. We grew, thrived, and created good jobs and businesses across this fabric of steel, coal mining, car making, chemical making, furniture making, consumer durables making, machine tool making, and then those great industries with new foreign competition from Germany and others restructured and were diminished in size, and some disappeared altogether. We don't make electronics in the Midwest anymore, even though we invented the electronics industry, like so many industries. And so that led to this growing economic inequities between people who lived in communities like the Detroits and the Flints and the Pittsburghs, where their signature factory town employers, whether steel or autos, had just disappeared or fundamentally shrunk. And other communities that had turned an economic corner and were thriving in the knowledge and high-tech world. And those inequities really had been building for many years. We treated them 100 years ago when our Gilded Age, when the first great industries arose and created the barons of steel and finance and railroads and oil, were hoarding all the wealth. In the 20s, 30s, and 40s, we redistributed that wealth and created social welfare system and education system that had people get the skills they needed to build a middle class, and that was our great strength. But now we're back in another Gilded Age in America, where people in communities like many in Michigan and across the manufacturing heartland, whose signature legacy employers have been diminished or disappeared. It's in those communities that have not found a future or have not found an avenue to good paying jobs and opportunity. That's where people are easily fanned to support populist, resentment-driven politics, nostalgic politics. We're going to bring back the good old days when your livelihood and status and economic future was secure. People like Trump and others who promised them the return to this kind of uh, gilded notion of a utopia, working class utopia, but also who encourage people not to support solutions like let's redistribute wealth again to help everybody get the education and skills and have a decent and the child care and the other supports for families that can help them participate and win in today's global economy, but encourage the resentments. It's immigrants that are being advantaged at your expense. It's Black people. It's woke elites who are telling you how to live your lives and forcing clean energy down your throats. So it's in communities that are in relative economic decline, that still haven't found a future, that are the most fertile ground for the particularly right-wing populists who sell resentments and cultural and economic nostalgia, who are much more dangerous because they also sell distrust of institutions. Trust me, strong man, to fix it. Left-wing populists in Europe and the US, like a Bernie Sanders or others who, like the left-wing populists that's against Mélenchon in France, they sell way more of a fix for the problems, like minimum wage, free healthcare, free college. That's actually solving the issues that are making people anxious. Right-wing populists sell nationalism, nostalgia, resentments, and encourage anti-democratic act-outs, which are a true threat to our democracy. And so 2016, when 3 states very narrowly elected Donald Trump, put him in the White House, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it was the working class folks, white folks in communities like Saginaw, Michigan, and outside Flint, Michigan, whose life wasn't what they hoped it would be, who responded to the Trumps. It wasn't this big groundswell of support. So, but that exposed this yawning economic divide between people and places that were succeeding, and in those people, in those places, and the people that are succeeding in a changed economy, they're optimistic. They're forward-looking. They don't vote for the populists who are selling resentments against immigrants and LGBT transgender people. They're not threatened by that. So no, that doesn't make any sense. I just want education. I want childcare. I want you to fix the infrastructure and the roads, just like in Germany, and the trains. So people vote the issues. They don't vote their resentments and their nostalgia and their identity of nationalist greatness restored. So we have a lot of work to do here. Germany has a lot of work to do to help everybody feel they have a future in today's changed economy. Because when they do, they're dismissive of these uber nationalists, identity-driven, resentment-driven political leaders who are a true threat to our democracies, as Germany's feeling, other countries are feeling. The Reform Party in the UK, who's a similarly, UK and the US are among the most regionally inequitable economies, meaning the gulf between London-centric living and the north of England. Those are the voters that responded to the Brexit. Let's blame Europe and immigrants for your life being not what it should be in these shattered coal mining and manufacturing communities in northern England. People were just sending a message. They wanted control of their lives. They could care less about Europe, but they were responding to a message like, do something to send a message. And unless those people feel they have a future and a place, or people in Saginaw, Michigan, who are easily rallied to think LGBTQ and immigrants are the problem, threat to their way of life and their livelihoods. Unless they feel more secure, they're going to keep acting out and responding to these right-wing nationalists who are a true menace.
You said you are hopeful, but how much damage is already being done to institutional norms? And maybe which institutions do you see at most vulnerable at the moment?
Well, I was in Germany, as you know, for 6 months on a fellowship at the Academy of International Affairs, North Rhine-Westphalia. He gave way too many talks on how authoritarianism and Trumpism could carry the day in the U.S. Um, and it's very important to understand that it, just like in 2016, 2020, it was a very 2024. It was a very, very narrow band of people, less than 1% of the overall voting population, who put him back in office. Those were people who were economically hurting, working hard. Working class people in America today are, Latino retail and service workers. They're poor whites in rural America. They're poor blacks in our cities who are working hard but still not able to put food on the table and take care of their families. They responded to even the guy who's a felon and the crazy guy who promised them simple message: I'm going to fix the economy for you. Biden Harris wrecked it. I'm going to fix it for you. And so that's what they were voting on. And now they're all having, regrets because he isn't fixing the economy. He's doing everything else that's politically polarized on the culture wars and everything else. So um, the source of optimism is just like in Hungary, which I went to when I was over in Europe, where Orban's authoritarian playbook, which Trump has mimicked, where you try to deride the free press, attack institutions like universities, wage culture wars against LGBTQ and other people, allow your friends and family to get rich by stealing public money. All of that contributes then to a total degradation of the things that actually people care about, like the cost of living, like the chance for decent jobs, like the education system, like the healthcare system, which is totally wrecked in both Hungary and here, and is the big issue right now in our debate. Are healthcare prices gonna spike? Trump said prices would go down. Trump prices have been going up since Trump was elected with his tariff craziness and everything else. So, and as you've been noting, I hope in Europe, now Trump's approval rating is down below 40%. And every Republican on the ballot is going to get turned out of office unless they're in like some super, super extreme district, and they know it. And that's why they're trying to change all the rules for voting. So institutions here are certainly under threat. I mean, everything that Trump's done for the most part has been illegal with his executive orders. Um, you know, defunding AID and universities, uh, blackmailing law firms to acquiesce to his agenda. All of that is unconstitutional, and mainly the courts are finding as such. But they're being appealed. Every case is being appealed by Trump, and it hasn't, and he doesn't want, and our Supreme Court doesn't want to like get to that definitive test where the Supreme Court says you're not allowed to do this, and he said goes ahead and does it. But that may come. But the our more states are run by Democratic governors. Our elections are remaining free and fair and not rigged, as much as Trump and others will keep trying to rig them. They haven't succeeded. For the most part, our judiciary, even stacked with lots of Republicans, is being independent and deciding 3/4 or more of the cases that are brought to them, questioning the legality of all of Trump's executive orders, which is basically all that he's done, have been found to be unconstitutional and illegal. And so that's a good, encouraging sign. Plus, 7 million people out in the streets at the No Kings rally after I just came back. I went to the version in Lansing, our state capital here in Michigan, where there were, 15,000, 20,000 people out in the State House. And there's some researchers have done a study that like when 3.5% of a country's population take to the streets to protest the overreach of those in power, that's when you turn them out of office. So we're getting close. Um, but yeah, the elections in November a month ago were very encouraging, as you can tell, where way beyond what people expected. Just progressive Democrats, moderate Democrats, it didn't matter. It was a message that like we do not appreciate what Trump is doing. He's doing all these crazy things, tearing down the White House, feather bedding his nest with foreign donations and gifts. Had these ridiculous things like FIFA giving him. And it's painful for me as an American to see countries and others like kowtow and kiss his behind. So my encouragement to Europe is take hope, stay strong. Yeah, the thing that we've lost, which we probably can't get back, is the trust of Europeans that we won't do this again. Even though I'm hopeful, like sanity will rule and we'll get back to playing the leadership in the world that we need to of the rules-based, rights-respecting international order, which is what we should be doing. Right now, we're joined team authoritarian. We're mimicking the coercive, blackmailing, might makes right power exercise of the Chinas and Russias. So Europe needs to work together with Europe and the UK, but also go beyond, work with Singapore and Japan and Asia. Your collective economy in the EU is almost as big as the United States, and it's way bigger than China. If you just add Canada, Australia, Japan, Singapore, other Asian nations to that economy, you're much bigger than the United States. You're a bigger economic bloc. Rewire your supply and production chains, make electric vehicles together with people that want to make them with you, strengthen your economic hand collectively so that you can, yeah, be polite, give Trump some golf clubs if that's what makes him happy, but don't kowtow or give in or acquiesce to bullying from us, and then punish us economically, because as we're seeing already, within only a year, it took Orban 10 or 15 years to wreck the economy. So now people are ready to turn Viktor Orban out of office if he doesn't re-rig the election vote next year. They will drive him from office because they've had it. Their country is falling apart. The economy is falling apart. That's Trump did in 1 year what it took Orban 10 years to do, and people are don't appreciate it, and they're eager to get rid of him. And it helps, not hurts, if we're suffering economically. That's the only because that's what elected him this time and the first time. People who were hurting responded to the wrong-headed, no solution answer of right-wing populism that wants to blame woke elites and people of color for why your life isn't what it should be.
You were earlier talking about the similarities between the rural area and the Rust Belt and some parts of Eastern Germany. You have worked closely with regional stakeholders in Michigan. Are there special types of community initiatives or policies that have actually helped rebuild trust or strengthen democratic resilience, so that we can maybe learn from this way?
Absolutely, and that's part of what we're trying to facilitate in this transatlantic collaborative initiative, the Heartland Transformation Network, which I've been creating and working with many, as you say, many friends and allies and partners in Germany and Europe and beyond. Um, when I first went, I'd been working on how do we accelerate economic change across the whole Midwest with the Brookings Institution for 20 years, including in Michigan's and Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. And what do we learn from those places like West Michigan, Grand Rapids, and Pittsburgh that have managed to find some new economic growth and footing? But when I first went to the Ruhr in 2017 on a German government-financed international delegation to look at how has the Ruhr for 50 years tried to support structural economic change and transition. That's the way Germany talks about these things. We talk about regional economic development. Germany talks about structural economic change and transformation. I went to the Ruhr. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so eerily similar to particularly Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania, which was the sort of the crucible of our heavy industry. That's where the coal was, and that's when the steel started to be made. And then a lot of manufacturing and heavy industry grew up all around this. The region went through the same arc of um, immigrants and in-migration being the engine, the arsenal of the war machine in World War I and II for both of our countries. It was has gone through then and even the topography is similar. Lots of little mountains and hills interspersed with rivers that run through. That's where you could develop the heavy industry. One little town bumping into another manufacturing, steel, coal mining town in this dense fabric of industrial development. And today, you look out your window in the Pittsburgh across the valleys, and you see the same thing you see when you're looking out from Bochum or Dortmund or any of those communities, you see the same old, industrial sites and slag heaps and factory towers, and then workers' housing that was built around. But they also went through the same arc of decline, um, with differential things they did that were helpful and differential things they did that or did not do that were led to different outcomes. So, in the Ruhr started way earlier to say, okay, steel is on its way out. Let's manage this decline. And in the 60s, you began to do things like create universities in a region, the Ruhr, that had no universities or colleges, because universities today are like the most important fulcrum for economic development and growth, because that's where all the talent is generated, all the new ideas, technologies, business startups. And then you went on and did lots of, and Germany generally has done lots more of um, retraining, relocation support systems, social welfare transition supports for people who are losing their incomes and pensions, more work in communities to green and digitize and bring new fabric of infrastructure to communities. Even your arts and parks fabric up there create a new environment in the Ruhr. Um, and that helped ease the transition out of old industry and nurture an environment that was attractive to people and new businesses. Um, and Pittsburgh did none of that. But what Pittsburgh did in this broad Western Pennsylvania region that looks exactly like the broader Ruhr, um, they started in the when steel collapsed totally in the 70s. Um, they realized, and everyone was leaving Pittsburgh, all the workers. We don't do retraining and economic support and social welfare systems to help people cope with economic change. We just don't do that in America, to our discredit. But what we did do was, and Pittsburgh did it themselves. Look, our factories are now our economic engines and of tomorrow are these great universities, Carnegie Mellon University, University of Pittsburgh. Let's lean in, let's attract federal research, technical dollars. Carnegie Mellon University already is one of the nation's leading computer science, uh, automation, AI development centers, medical research at University of Pittsburgh. So they developed this whole investment in new high-tech startups coming out of the world's leading data science, computer science, which is the world of today. All the industries that run the algorithms that tell the robots, running around in factories what to do, come out of this data science, computer science model. So Pittsburgh strategically invested and built a new high-tech economy that pays high wages. And you go to downtown Pittsburgh, where there used to be like hell with the lid off is what they used to call it, because it was all these factories and this mess of pollution. They cleaned all that up, and now they built this high-tech economy. It looks like Silicon Valley in downtown Pittsburgh. All these manufacturing communities up the rivers and out of town are emptied out and experience 50% more population loss. And so they built a new high-tech economy with high wages, but they ignored the transition and people who were living in the steel towns all around Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh itself is thriving. It's attracting young, educated people and engineers to work in that maw. But all these other communities outside of it are going Trumpier every day because they're pissed off white working class folks like, where's my future? And so the politics are even more polarized, even though they built more than the Ruhr, a new thriving high-tech economy. The Ruhr eased the pain for most of the people in this transition. So you didn't have this giant political act out with little spikes accepted, Gelsenkirchen and a few other places that are the hardest hit. People are most nostalgic and feeling like we didn't get ours. They're the most responsive to the AFD. But fundamentally, Pittsburgh or Ruhr did a way better job in a multifaceted way of kind of managing and easing the transition from this old to something beginning that's new. Um, and but and that helped the politics of the whole region not go totally south. Pittsburgh did an amazing thing, which is build a new high-tech economy that's globally competitive, like Silicon Valley, out of their major assets, which are these amazing universities, which is working for Pittsburgh itself. But everyone around Pittsburgh is ticked off and eager to, blow up the world and following Donald Trump. So the lesson would be, we need to do both things. Meaning Germany needs to learn from us, and we're eager to facilitate. How can we teach you to build a high-tech innovation economy that kicks out the whole disruptive new social media and technology businesses that run the world? And that's even more urgent now, given America's turn since Vance came to Munich and basically said, Europe, you're on your own. You got to build your own defense industry, defend yourself. Now, your defense industry is way too hostage to American technology still in Europe. And you need to have a growth economy in Germany and elsewhere. That's the big challenge. The only way you get a growth economy is that you build the new companies that are the game changers that create new high value, high growth jobs. We've showed how to do that even in the places like Pittsburgh that are old economy icons. We know how to turn the innovations and new technologies that come out of a University of Bochum or Duisburg, and we've been engaging with those folks into new high-tech startups that create new multimillionaires in tech who create their own new high-tech startups that create a German high-tech industry, which Germany's been trying but isn't very good at it. Europe's been trying, isn't very good at it. That's probably one of the urgent challenges of today. And your chancellor and the President Macron talked about it. We have got to have our own high-tech industry, or we're going to be hostage to our tech oligarchs who are now joined Team Trump and are happy to blackmail Europe and say, no, we want access to your market. And we don't want to play by your rules on transparency and disinformation. Don't let them in. Make them play by the rules, but the only way you succeed at doing that is by building your own high-tech economy so that you don't have to rely on them.
As a last question, if you had to name one essential ingredient for strengthening democracy in structurally weak regions, as we talked about it, what would it be?
I'll give you two, and because they're the two different things that are most important. One is leadership that understands, connects with, and can empower and empathize and motivate people who are anxious, working class folks, anxious about their future, who understand what they're feeling, acknowledge it, and then are of those people and can talk to them and say, hey, understand how you're feeling. Here's what I'm going to do, what we're going to do to meet your needs and your legitimate frustrations. We're going to make sure you and your kids have a future, a job, childcare, whatever it is that you're lacking. We're going to deliver that for you. And that starts with someone who's organically and authentically connected, not talking down to, who are these angry people over here? What do they need? How do we pat them on the head and make them go away? So two is then those investments and those commitment to disproportionately deliver support for people that empower them to build their own future. Communities got to define their own future based on who they are. Leaders' job in Berlin and in North Rhine-Westphalia is to say, okay, what do you need? Understand how you're feeling. What can we do to help you make your own plan to take your community to where it wants to go? And our job is to pour money and support into that plan and help you succeed.
John Austin, thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast.
Happy to be with you. Thank you.
1012, der Menschenrechte-Podcast des Fritz-Bauer-Forums. Mehr Informationen zu unserer Arbeit unter fritz-bauer-forum.de.